how many others than Antifa, Ray Epps, and the DC cops, Capitol cops, contributed to entrap innocents. Um, what was the plan? I mean, there was a plan there.
Sure.
First, you welcome them, and then you shoot these things at them.
Yeah, and, you know, everything was fine until about 2:16, 2:20 p.m. that afternoon.
Yeah.
All the crowds outside, even on the west side of the Capitol where the scaffolding was in the tower, everybody was just singing and chanting and that sort of stuff. For reasons which we have not yet discovered, we don't know who issued the order. The Capitol Police and the Metro Police started shooting percussion grenades into the crowd, shooting rubber bullets in, shooting pepper balls in, and that made the crowd, that, needless to say, agitated the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know,
and it was obviously meant to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Set up a scenario.
Yeah. The concept was to incite a bigger riot. I was thinking about this last night. Think about this. They arrested 1,583 people, which they claim were terrorists, which they claim were insurrectionists, which they claim were trying to overthrow the government, right?
Yeah.
Did you hear about any gun battles when people got arrested?
Not one.
No. Not a single one, to my knowledge.
Except for Ashley Babbitt, not a single one.
All these fierce, bad insurrectionists came to their front doors, even when the FBI is pulling machine guns on their 4-year-old kids, and didn't shoot back. They show up at 6 o'clock in the morning with their loudspeakers and their lights blaring, kicking in the door, and no one took offense at that enough to pull a gun and try to defend themselves. You got to imagine. Say Dave Weinbaum's fast asleep at 6 o'clock in the morning. In the middle of the winter, all of a sudden his house is lit up by lights. People are kicking in the doors. You look outside and people with machine guns are all over the place. There's no way you can tell what's going on because you're looking into the blinding lights of their spotlights. How the hell do you know who they are? And yet, if these were really fierce, bad insurrectionists, wouldn't you think at least one of them would err and make a mistake and think he was under attack and fight back? But no, everybody just submitted to arrest.
Yeah.
Submitted to what the FBI told them to do.
Because, I sleep naked.
So. A lot of people sleep naked. A lot of these people were only given the opportunity to put on their underpants before they got hauled out in front of the, to stand out in the snow for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
A guy who's organizing the Washington State J6ers. There's 33 Washington State J6ers. A guy named Scott Christensen. When they came in and raided his house, he had a 15-year-old daughter in her underwear, who the cops pulled out of the house, made stand out in the wintertime in Washington State, then took her back in the house, made her undress and redress in front of 15 FBI agents with their machine guns trained on her. I mean, for trespass, for the trespass of her father. A lot of these things, a lot of these raids took place years later. People were still getting arrested right before the election last fall, when the FBI and the federal government had been investigating this, the largest investigation in the history of the FBI, they'll tell you. And they knew damn well, because they were following these people and surveilling them and tracing them for months and sometimes years, knew they were completely harmless, ordinary citizens, and they would still show up at 6 o'clock in the morning with 30 FBI officers and federal marshals in full combat gear with machine guns and kick in their doors. This was not a pursuit of justice.
Well, who gave the orders to this? Was it Merrick?
I don't know who actually is running the White House. Nobody does. Nobody knows who was president in those days.
Yeah,
but I guarantee it went as high as
a real secret there. But if the FBI was doing it, who were they directed by?
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably said this on your show a couple of weeks ago, but if I were prosecuting these cases, I would take the deposition of the FBI officer that's holding his machine gun on a 4-year-old, and I'd say, what kind of a reprehensible bastard are you to hold a machine gun on a 4-year-old? And he'd say, I didn't want to do it. It's ridiculous. We think this is the most ridiculous thing we ever did, but I was told to do it by so-and-so. Then you take so-and-so's deposition.
Yeah.
And you say, what kind of a reprehensible bastard are you to order your FBI agents to hold 4-year-olds?
Climb up the ladder there, right?
Absolutely. All the way up to Merrick Garland. And if Merrick Garland says, it wasn't my decision, it was somebody at the White House, then we find that person. And Ed Martin has vowed to find these people, to prosecute the ones that are still subject to prosecution, and to out and shame the ones that he can't prosecute.
No, he's with the DOJ right now, right?
Yeah, he's got a number of different hats now, but he is the weaponization czar for the DOJ to find out, to investigate all the weaponization of the government under the Biden administration and then fix it if possible.
Now, please explain how the DC judges and prosecutors claim the evidence showed criminal activity, trespassing, or violence or vandalism to deprive the 1/6ers of their constitutional rights.
Well, amongst other things, the ASAs, assistant U.S. attorneys, were having ex parte communications with the judges, which is, of course, completely impermissible. The judges were declaring the defendants guilty before they'd heard any evidence in both bench and jury trials. The judges in almost every case that I've talked to at the time of sentencing says, I'm not sentencing you for what you did, but to set an example, okay? You asked me earlier what all this was designed to do. This was designed to intimidate the American people, to show that if you stood up against your government, the government will crush you, destroy you, make your life a living hell, bankrupt you, make you unemployable, and make you wish you'd never been born. Second thing is they were hoping to inspire a bigger response. So there'd be some dead bodies on the ground that they could film. And for example, the FBI, the Capitol Police rather, were directing people that had come in through open doors
Right.
to leave through broken windows. So they get that photo op of people coming out of broken windows. I mean, Capitol Police instructed people who had come in through doors, the Capitol Police had opened for them to leave through broken windows, just so they could get those pictures. They were faking evidence. They were hiding exculpatory evidence. They were doctoring photographs. I mean, it is the most corrupt thing. And then you have the court-appointed public defenders, who are almost all leftists, who would tell our clients, you know, you're guilty, you're an insurrectionist, you should plead guilty and you should go to prison. I mean, the people that are allegedly representing.
Well, how do you once they plead guilty? What are your options as a lawyer?
Well, you know, they've all been pardoned now by the president. So, you know, we're not representing them on any criminal charges, although some people are still facing some criminal charges. But what we're doing is we're attempting to set up a program to get them compensated. And I mean, most of these people that weren't self-employed, are almost universally unemployable,
right?
Because they're now insurrectionists or terrorists or criminals. And you know that the conundrum is, right, the government sets you up to where they want to charge you with 15 felonies that's going to cost you the rest of your life in prison for doing no more than walking through an open door that's being held open for you by the cops.
Yeah.
They then use that coercive force to get you to plead guilty to a misdemeanor like picketing and parading or remaining in a restricted area, i.e. trespass, right? And then you plead guilty. And then the press says, well, look, they're guilty. They admitted they were guilty.
Yeah.
But they require you, the government forced you to commit perjury to admit doing something you didn't do. And then they say, well, you pled guilty to it, so you did it, right?
Yeah.
And all these people that, you know, the people that walked in, my record is 6 seconds. One of the guys was 6 seconds in the Capitol building, stepped his foot in, looked around, said, not here, steps back out.
That was a heavy boot he was wearing.
Yeah. But that's the end game of all this was they wanted to create a big enough scene, a big enough, quote, insurrection, unquote, where they'd be able to blame it on Donald Trump and keep him from being able to run for re-election under the 14th Amendment.